Dr. BJ Fogg is a behavioral scientist at Stanford, where he directs research and innovation at the Behavior Design Lab. So he's actually the leader of this Behavior Design Lab and the creator of that design lab. He also teaches models and methods in graduate seminars. On the industry side of things, in the non-academic world, BJ trains innovators to use his work so they can create solutions that influence behavior. The focus areas include health, sustainability, financial well-being, learning, productivity, and engagement. His early work on persuasive technology actually helped inform the design of products that millions love and use every day, including Instagram. And if you don't know what Instagram is, that's a social media platform that Facebook bought for $1 billion. So yes, BJ actually had a part in that in terms of one of his one of his students co-founded Instagram, and he helped in the persuasive technology of that. And BJ has created a new method of habit formation called Tiny Habits. And that's that book that you may have read. Using his online platform and email, he has personally coached over 60,000 people in creating habits. Fortune magazine named BJ the new guru you should know, and for his insights about mobile and social networks. So with that, please help me welcome
everybody.
BJ Fogg.
You guys, hi Robbie, hi everybody. I'm so glad to be here. And I'm sorry I couldn't join at the very start. One thing about habits and routines is when one of your routines or habit shifts, it cascades and affects other things down the road. I mean, we've all been there, especially things that happen in the morning. I have a very routinized morning, bam, 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 bam. But if one of those dominoes doesn't fall, or it falls in the different direction, then it can affect all your other routines. So, but even so, sorry that I am late. Sorry it didn't work out otherwise, but I'm here now, and I'll do everything I can to make this totally worth your while. Hi again, Robbie. Hi, everybody.
Awesome, BJ. So great to have you here, my friend. And so before we get started, one thing that I want to do, which I know, BJ, my friend, you're going to totally agree with this. Let's do the first things first, which is celebrate that you're here, right? I want you to celebrate that you're here. Let's do some fist pumps in the air. Why are we celebrating? Because we're connecting here with Dr. BJ Fogg, and we're going to learn about behavior. So we all have behaviors, right? You guys are all achievers. You're all optimizers. Otherwise, you don't join a show. You don't join a show like this if you're not an optimizer. And many of you are part of our VIP family. So you train with us multiple times per week. You're a total achiever, total optimizer. But you have things you want to improve. You have habits you want to improve. You have things you want to stop, regardless of how great you think your life or don't think your life is right now. And BJ is one of the best in the world to help us do that. So that's why we're excited. That's why we're going to achieve, right? So I want you to give yourself a pat on the back and just feel that euphoric sense of being here, right? So let's come up with one more, BJ. Let's come up with one more celebration before we get started with today's show.
All right, boom, fist pump, double fist pump. I like that. That's a natural one for me, for sure. So.
Awesome. So BJ, it's so interesting because, you have really the science of behavior is really quite complex when you start really looking at all the diagrams and stuff, but you can see your genius because you've taken a very complex subject and you've made it very simple, right? It has to do with three big major factors and then some other supportive factors that can make those three major factors even more effective. So where would you like to, let's do this, BJ. Before we get started, let's look at this. Let's see, what is a great question, BJ? Would you like to go with a habit they want to start or something?
Oh my gosh, I'm happy to start anywhere, but maybe super practical stuff. And then we can backfill with like how to think about it systematically and the conceptual stuff. Because I think most people are here for just practical help. Yeah.
Awesome. Yes. So let's go with the question first. In terms of your practical health, in terms of things you want to achieve in your health and or fitness, what is a habit that you would either like to start or you would like to make some level of significant improvement in? Go ahead and write that in the chat now. And then I think what would be great, BJ, is if you could teach us, okay, based on that, what should we do? How can we help the highest percentage of attendees in the Full Body Fix today achieve exactly what they've posted in the chat?
Got it. Well, here's the good news. And this is one reason I was so excited to talk with you and Robbie on this. It's not, that saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That is not true when it comes to habits and behavior change. Not true at all. And I used to think it was true, but that was about 15 years ago. And I definitely learned it's not, because I have really changed a whole variety of habits of mine, including ones where I think I'm at a fitness level, probably the best in the last 20 years. I'm almost 60 now. And I've coached a lot of people over 50, and I have one very, very good friend in her 90s. She's 93, and she's creating new habits and discovering. And so, it's not that, and this goes to your point earlier, Robbie, and we'll get to this conceptually. There is one factor that makes it seem like behavior is complicated. And in some ways it truly is, but for the most part, habits and behavior change is pretty straightforward. We'll get to that one factor a little bit later. Robbie, you guide me here in terms of, I see the suggestions in the chat bar. Why don't you moderate or tell me which ones you think where I can be most helpful?
Yeah, so you'd like to use an example. All right. So I'm a little bit biased. I like Nancy, so I like, more going to bed earlier, right? Going to bed earlier, because sleep is a big thing. It has to do with lights and blue light and all devices and just what you're doing at night and just habits and all kinds of stuff. I've recently learned a prompt myself. Yes, the amazing blue light glasses. Yeah, and so. Yeah. And I've recently learned some new prompts that have actually really helped me. So why don't we use that as an example? Okay. Going to bed earlier, getting better sleep.
Great. One of the keys, there are certain kinds of habits that you need to look at. The household needs to change together, and going to bed is one of those. Nutrition, media use, and to some extent productivity if you're working from home, because what people do around you has a huge influence on what you do. And we don't like to admit how much other people influence our behaviors. And I believe, I've not done scientific research on specifically sleep, but it fits the pattern, that if everybody else in your household is staying up till 11 or 12 at night and you want to go to bed at 8, that's kind of tough to do, okay? So this would be one of the areas where you would try to get the cooperation of the people in your household, whether that's a husband or wife or kids or roommates. And so that would be one of the most effective things you could do, is have that conversation and say, hey, what about if we start going to bed earlier or whatever, and try to come to an agreement on that. Super important. And if you can do that, or even if you can't, here are some other things you can do. So number one, change the context around you by having the people around you join you in this journey. And I call that a journey group. And I talk about that a little bit in Tiny Habits. The next thing to focus on is making it really easy to go to bed, okay? In our home, my partner likes having a lot of pillows and stuff on the bed. I'm not a fan of that, but there's a point in the evening where all those pillows come off and they get stored where they're stored. I usually am the one that draws the curtains because I believe in a really dark room, and do the preparation work well in advance of the bedtime. The reason you want to do that is because if a task seems hard, like going to bed, it's like, oh, I should go to bed, but man, we got to take the pillows off. We got to turn off all the lights. There's all these tasks. If something seems hard to do, you're much more likely to procrastinate. Okay. And if something seems really easy, it's like, all I have to do is go get in bed. I've already brushed my teeth, etc. So don't wait to do all of those bedtime things. In that moment you want to go to bed, look to create habits of doing those things earlier. in our home, so we're the kind of people that shower in the evenings, right? So shower in the evenings and actually before we eat dinner. So it would make sense, like after I dry off, I'll tell you the routine. I shower, I dry off, I put on lotion because my skin gets dry when I'm here in California. Maui, I don't need to do that. I put on lotion and then I put on something that's really casual and comfortable. And after I put on those like sweatpants and t-shirt, that's when I would pull the curtains. And if my partner hasn't taken all the pillows and stuff out of the bed, that's when I would do that, right? So I already have started that nighttime process. And then with something like brushing and flossing, after I finish dinner, I will immediately brush my teeth and floss. Bam, that one's done. Now, I don't wear contacts and things like that, so I don't have to deal with that. But my partner does, and he will do that. And he also wears hearing aids. And he'll do that before we hang out in the evenings. And that's a little frustrating because he can't, he's pretty good at hearing, but still. But the point is, make it really, really easy. So when that moment comes at 8:30 or 9 or whatever you want, all you have to do is just turn off a few lights and get in bed. So don't stack everything up at that moment of 8:30. We've got to do all these things. Find ways to wire that in earlier. And with that, I will stop. There might be some follow-on questions, but the takeaway here is, one, your context influences you. So help the people around you change. Number two, the easier the behavior, the more likely you are to do it, and the more likely it is to become a habit.
That makes so much sense. That's exactly what I found is, if depending on which time I brush my teeth, that is going to determine when I go to sleep. Because brushing my teeth is the biggest, because, I spend, like Dina and Laura and potentially others, but that's why I stopped posting the chat, talking about perfectionism and overthinking. So let me give you a good example of that. It probably takes me about 7 minutes to brush my teeth, which is a really long time. Right. And it's not because I'm beating the heck out of my gums and this type of thing. I use electric toothbrush. It's super, super thorough, just like BioOpt is. And which our VIPs know what that is. So long story short, it takes a long time to brush my teeth. If I do that, the earlier I do it within reason, the easier it's, because I start getting tired. And that makes so much sense, because once you get tired at night, it's even less likely that you're going to want to take off the pillows, want to take out the contact lenses, take off the makeup for the ladies that wear makeup, all these things, right? So that makes so much sense. And then, I have to give kudos to my wife, Patricia, because she has a biological clock that's so strong. She turns into a pumpkin by 9 p.m. Her eyes start closing and her whole body language just completely changes. And so there's no trying to keep her up. There's no negotiating with her to stay up and watch a show with me. So she goes to bed and just like a rock.
I love that. Let me build on that a little bit. We can get to another topic in a minute, but y'all know sleep is so important. So much. And in my mind, I don't care. I'm not a medical expert on sleep like Michael Bruce or others, but really get the best quality sleep you can. In our home, as soon as one of us says, "Oh, I'm tired, let's go to bed," the answer is always yes. I can't think maybe 1, maybe 2 times in the last year where one of us said, "I'm tired, let's go to bed," and the other one said, "I'm going to stay up." No, it's just like, and usually it's my partner, and it can be, you guys, you're going to think this is insane. It might be 7:30. And when we're in Maui, it might be as early as 7, because there's nothing to do in Maui after it gets dark, and in the winter when we're there, and then we just go to bed, but we get up at like 4 or 5, we get up super early without an alarm clock. So we go to bed early, we get up early. And I think, and you inspired me to say this, Robbie, it's just this cooperation that as soon as one person wants to go to bed, the other one, it's nobody says, "I'm going to stay up," and so on. So we stay on the same schedule. And I think that's really helpful. And then all the stuff with the lighting, I'm the one that obsesses about that. My partner doesn't care. He doesn't really believe very much in that, but all the dimming the light and cooling off the room and et cetera, et cetera. I've really worked hard on optimizing my sleep. It really matters a lot. And then I get plenty of sleep and I don't need an alarm clock. Like this morning, it was probably Saturday and I'm getting up at 5. not that I have to, but I'm just ready. I'm just ready to get up and I just want to get going on my day. So I get up and I practice the piano for 30 or 40 minutes and then get on with my day and hopefully don't get derailed.
So that's how some things to think about. And you talked a lot about prompts, right? A lot of those suggestions is what you would call prompts in terms of, it's this activating event that then comes right before the behavior, basically, correct?
Yeah, and the way to do it, we've evolved our thing over years and we didn't have to be as deliberate as what I'm going to suggest for you. List everything that you want to do or need to do before you go to bed. Lock the door, turn off the light, brush my teeth, floss my teeth, take out my contacts, etc. Turn down the bed, etc. And then think, what can this come after? Your existing routine. After I get, dry off from the shower, I will close the curtains. After I, and these aren't mine, but I'm trying to pick something quite general for everybody. After we start the dishwasher, dinner meal, then this happens. After the first commercial comes on in the evening, I will brush your teeth, etc. So you look for things you do very reliably, and then you use those to remind you to do one or more of the items on your preparing for bed list. So again, kind of front load that. So then when that moment comes when you or somebody says, hey, let's go to bed, you're like, boom, and you're like 15 seconds away from actually getting in bed and making that a reality.
So how should we unpack this and apply this so that everybody in this meeting with us right now can have the takeaway for their thing? So in terms of habit, let's go into habit creating a new routine, changing something for a better outcome. There's motivation, right? There's prompt and there's ability. So what should they know about that?
Yeah, so all behavior in the universe comes down to three things: motivation, ability, and prompt. And I don't have my teaching whiteboard up here, but I will write it up. And I call this the Fogg behavior model. So everything comes down to this. Behavior happens when there's motivation to behavior, ability, and a prompt. Now you say, well, what's the difference between a behavior and a habit? Well, a habit is a subset of a behavior. Okay, so the big set is behaviors. Within that, we have behaviors we do automatically. Those are habits. So this also applies to habits. Habits occur when there's a prompt and you have ability and motivation to do it. Now, that is a model that I put together in 2007. I call it the Fogg behavior model. It was a few years later, I'd say about 3.5 years later, when I created the tiny habits method. And what you do in that method is, one, for motivation, you pick new habits that you want, okay? Don't pick habits you don't want. Pick habits you want. So motivation is accounted for. At least part of you wants it. Part of you wants to go to bed early. Maybe part of you doesn't, okay? But at least part of you wants it. Next, you make it really, really easy to do. Make the habit so easy to do that it doesn't take much willpower or discipline, whether that's going to bed or eating fermented foods or putting on blue blocking glasses or, I'll keep going, or lifting kettlebells. Bam, this is in my home office. Whatever it is, make it really easy to do. And then the only thing that's remaining after you pick habits you want, you've made it easy, is the prompt. What's going to remind you to do it? And don't just rely on your memory. And the tiny habits method, you look for a routine you already do to be the prompt to do the new behavior. So I get up, I talk on the phone from my home office, and after I hang up the phone, I will lift up the kettlebell and I mostly try to do shoulder exercises. After I pee, which is a routine, something we all do, I do push-ups. Okay, so the tiny habit design is, after I pee, I will do 2 push-ups. Now, usually I do a lot more than 2, but you set the bar really low. Okay, so that is the general answer. It comes from a universal model of behavior. All behavior in all cultures, all ages, This is the model. And then with tiny habits, you design for each one. And the prompt, surprisingly, is we use an existing routine, something you already do.
That's awesome. You know, it makes me think of, so one thing I teach our VIP family, as I like to call them, when they join their VIP mastermind, after a month, they all become part of this loving, caring fitness family. And they learn that as they get into the system. But one thing I teach them is because everybody, it's so common, like 60% of them, when they join, they think like, yeah, we're going to get it in the first session, and the session went too fast, and they're very anxious to make sure that everything gets accomplished and is perfect in the first week. And so the big thing that I teach all of them is, hey, you're just like, I think you would agree, BJ, if you really look at behaviors and all the things that people are trying to, there's a level of adaptation in everything. In fitness, it's especially true. So you don't need to be, if you're at 0, you don't need to be at 100. You need to go to like 3. So join the session, go through the motions, feel good about yourself, congratulate yourself, have all the positive emotion in the world. That is what's going to get you to follow through.
Yeah.
Right. And so
on.
And it made me think so much. Everything you just shared is exactly that. So
Deanna in the chat used a word that's so important: consistency. So when you're designing for new habits, you're not designing for the size of the habit. It's consistency. Design it so you can be really, really consistent. And part of that is make it so easy that even when you're tired or you're anxious or stressed out or something, you can still do the habit. That's why my 2 push-up thing, I can do a lot more than 2 push-ups, especially now I've done it for years. But there are times when I'm just not feeling that good, or I'm just not in the mood. I'll do 2 push-ups, call it good. I'll congratulate myself for being consistent, and I'll move on with my day. So whatever habit you design, I notice I said design again. It's not willpower, it's not discipline. You're designing the habit into your normal, regular life. Make it so easy that you can be consistent. Find a place in your schedule where it fits so well that you can be consistent. And even if you only floss 1 tooth or do 2 push-ups or just lift the kettlebell 1 time and that's all you do, recognize that the key is consistency. Let me give an analogy. How many of you, you probably haven't, maybe you've done this lately, I haven't, but go out camping and you have a fire and you stay overnight. Okay, so as a Boy Scout, Eagle Scout, my family's like from Idaho and we camp all the time. If you'll remember, in the morning, when you wake up and it's freezing cold, as long as there's a little coal or ember going, bam, you can get the fire going again. But if it goes completely out, I was like, oh no. That's how I think about this consistency thing with habits. As long as you have it going, you can create a bigger version of it any day that you want. So I can do 20 or 30 push-ups. I can floss all my teeth. I can do a lot more than just lift the kettlebell once. And so it's almost like keep that spark every day, make sure that ember doesn't go out. And then on the days when you're more motivated, do a bigger version of it. And you will naturally do more and more because your motivation will go up and your ability will go up. But there's going to be times when you just don't want to or can't do more. Then you just keep that little spark alive. You do the minimal version and you feel good about doing the minimal version. And you just look forward to the next day when you will kind of fan that ember and boom, it'll pop and be a much bigger habit.
You know, that makes perfect sense because I mean, I started exercise when I was 8 years old and I basically never stopped. And I've gotten busy and I have done massive business projects and all kinds of stuff. And when things start pulling me, or I'm traveling, because Patty insists that I've gone to Europe for a month at a time, which is as hard as it is mentally for me to go away from work, because I'm kind of a one track, I want to stay on the same track kind of person. So the one thing that's really, I would say, has kept it going always for me is no matter what, I do the exercise. So it might be 10 minutes. It might be an hour. It might be a 2-hour workout. It might be my jujitsu work. It might be whatever, but I always do that one thing. And that's that. So that habit never dies. And that's just, that's brilliant. So,
and Robbie, I'm going to set the bar even lower for everybody. Okay. So once I started getting into my 50s, like many of you, I was like, okay, I need to work on strength training. All right. And so the kettlebell for me, I really like. And Robbie, even if I just do this one time and I put it back, and I count that as a success. So not even 10 minutes, because psychologically 10 minutes might be, oh, I'm so busy or stressed out or have these other commitments. So give yourself permission to do a version of the habit that is so tiny. You know, keep that little ember, keep that spark alive. Don't feel bad about it. Just know that the next day, when you have more time or motivation, you'll do a bigger version of it. So I'm going to just really emphasize, lower the bar and don't raise the bar. You keep it really low. And when you do more, you see that as extra credit. That's one of the hacks in Tiny Habits. And one of the counterintuitive aspects of this method is you make it so easy, you can be consistent every day, and you do not raise the bar on yourself. You keep it low. Like I said earlier, you will naturally do more as it progresses because you'll have more motivation and more ability, which means you'll do more. But the key, and this is really hard, it's very hard for my Stanford students, and probably many of you that have a history of achievement, is when it comes to habits, set the bar low, keep it low, and congratulate yourself every time you exceed that bar.
So one thing that's really interesting for me, BJ, that just came up is you can also make your habits, those small habits, even better, right? Because sometimes you don't necessarily even need to grow the habit. So for example, you're sharing so much wealth and knowledge with us. I'd like to share one wealth and knowledge with you, which you can take the same amount of time and use the same kettlebell and make an even better result, right? So instead of doing your upright row, and we're going to stay on the topic of behavior, instead of doing your upright row, what I want you to do is bend over, keeping your back super aligned, and do rows. Right? Okay. Just do the same reps. Yes, sir. Yep. Back aligned. Push your butt up in the air. Put your butt up in the air a little bit more. Yep. Head aligned. And row. And pull your scapula back and down. No, pull your scapula back and down. Yes. And pull it into your upper abdomen. Yes, because exactly. Yes. Perfect. Right? Because the position you're doing before, when you internally rotate the shoulder, this can lead to shoulder impingement. So it'd be so much better if you do that. You're going to get same amount of time, better result. Yeah. Yes, sir. You're so welcome. You're so welcome.
Thank you. So, oh my gosh. You just saved me like weeks, if not longer, of therapy. I appreciate that.
Yes, you're so welcome. And anything you need like that, BJ, I'm here for you, my friend. So all you have to do is ask, text me. I'm here for you. One thing I'd like to do, BJ, is one big thing I'd like to do in our show here is we go to Q&A. So we go to questions and answers. Our VIPs have elite access because they're part of the VIP family. So they get to ask questions first. And we'll go about to the top of the hour, about till 12. So we're going to turn it over to questions now. But before I do, I know there's so much that you could share with us, BJ, and that it's not going to happen in an hour. So where can people get the full resource of BJ, the full everything, right? Yeah. They can get everything that you would want to share. Where should they go?
Yeah. I'm not sure there's one place, but bjfogg.com is probably the best place. And then for one resource, it's the Tiny Habits book. Of course, bjfogg.com will point to the Tiny Habits book. It points to other, yes. So what I am seeing Deanna hold up, that's the version of the book to get. The US paperback, I think, is the best version. They're very similar, but that's my favorite one. And so those would be your resources right there.
Can you spotlight Patricia, Dina on the screen if she's showing the book?
Oh, and I'll show you one of mine.
So so everyone can get a visual representation. There we go. Yeah.
So thank you, Deanna. And if you really want the professional version, you take the paperback and you get it spiral bound. You go to your printer, they saw off the spine. And so, so I have a few of these, and this is like the pro version because it will lay flat or it will do this. So I wish they would sell this one out, but you just got to get it done. So, yeah.
So bjfogg.com, is that
Yes.
BJ Fogg, and Patricia's posted that in the chat now. bjfogg.com, and what else, BJ?
Just the Tiny Habits book. I mean,
okay.
This book is all new stuff. This is not a summary of old things. There's a very popular habit book that you've probably heard of, which is just summarizing the old stuff and some of my stuff. It's very popular. It's been incredibly well marketed, but I don't find anything new in the book, to be frank. What's in Tiny Habits is all new. I'm not taking other people's material and packaging it. I'm not taking the old stuff. This is all new and breakthrough. And so I am very happy to bring it all together between two covers. And it's not everything related to habits. It's as much as they would let me do, my editors. And it's innovative and it's accurate and it's breakthrough. And I hear from people every day whose lives have changed because of it. And it makes me really happy. And so I'm not going to be shy about the innovations in the book. I started listing them and I got over 100. And I was like, okay, there's over 100 things in this book that are new, that are nowhere else. So, but yes, there's stories and true stories. And some people get impatient with the stories and some people love the stories. It just depends on who you are. But conceptually, there's over 100 new concepts or techniques in the book. So, okay, I don't know how to call on people. I see VIPs get ready to raise your hands. Okay, there we go.
I can facilitate. I'll facilitate that for you, BJ. So, all right, let me take a look at my gallery here, see who Zoom is telling me the order of. So who has questions? So VIPs first, let us know your questions. So anything that you would like to, habits you want to stop, habits you want to start, anything in terms of behavior that you'd like to improve, raise your hand. BJ can connect with you directly here. And Alexander, hello, my friend. And by the way, BJ, Alexander is a fellow Genius Network member.
Hello, yes. Hi, Alexander. Hi again. Okay, well, Alexander goes
there we go. All right, now we're unmuted.
We color coordinated our outfits today, huh, Alexander? Yeah.
Indeed, we did. BJ, good to see you. I saw you on the last Genius as well, so good to see you. Thank you, everybody, for making time for this. Quick question for me. How do you deal with plateaus in the habit methodology that you've built?
If a habit is no longer serving me or exciting me, I swap it out for a different habit. I pick something else. And I think of it like a garden. So we got our garden, we came back from Maui a month ago. Our garden's all in here in California. And there'll be times in the garden, whether it's flowers or vegetables or whatever, it's like, yeah, I don't really love this flower anymore, this type of flower. I'm going to pull it out and do something else. So just because you thought you wanted to, I don't know, row. I do a lot of rowing these days. I love rowing, but there may be a point where it's like, yeah, it's no longer doing it for me. Then I'll just move on to something else that serves a similar purpose. So I always, it's really important to start where you want to start. And then if a certain kind of workout or eating nutrition approach no longer excites you, do something else. And then you'll cycle through. I mean, I do this in music a lot, ton of guitar. And then I got into recorders and I have all sorts of bizarre recorders. And then I came back to keyboard. In fact, this week I bought 2 new keyboards and that's what I play in the mornings. Now keyboard may not be all that exciting and I might move on to cello or something. And that's okay because what I'm doing every day is music. And then when I come back to keyboard or whatever, I'm going to be a better musician. So just be flexible and make sure that if you're feeling a plateau, that's what I do. Now, there's other people that might join CrossFit or join a group that will push them to the next level. That's a motivational approach. Okay, that's how to boost your motivation. In Tiny Habits, it's not about boosting your motivation. It's about helping yourself do what you already want to do. And if that shifts, shift your habit to what you already want to do. So again, it's really different than a traditional approach. Thanks for that question. I hope that addresses what you had in mind.
Thank you, Alexander. And next up, we have Dina, our next VIP. Welcome, Dina.
Dina, who I quoted and who showed the cover of the book. Is that right?
Hi.
Hey.
Hi.
Hey.
You're like a rock star to me. I have to admit, I'm having like little girl crushes here because I've read your book. I give your book to all my clients. You know, a welcome gift for my clients. I'm like a functional medicine health coach, and part of my program is we do metabolic reset, and this book is in the pack for everyone because it's so instrumental. So I have to say thank you because you've taught me so much. I have to say the first go round that I read your book, I was pissed off because I felt like you were writing about me. There was like too many things in there that I had to do, and it was a little bit aggravating. So I felt like there was some of that I needed to really address in a good way. Like, you know, it's like it got me very, very motivated, but it's so actionable. With that said, I work with a lot of people who are having difficulty with, including myself, like getting rid of old mindsets. It's the mindsets, and I know you're saying motivation may not be, you know, the factor that we should work on. But you know, when you're working with health, there's certain things that you kind of need to do, and so I'm in a position where I want to keep people motivated and keep them motivated to do it, but it's really hard to get out of the mindset, the monkey mind that's telling you I can't, or, you know, that's not me. I'm talking a lot to the people about, like, you know, see yourself as, you know, that healthy person, see yourself as the athlete, see yourself as that person that can get stronger. And it's a big mindset shift, maybe for many of the VIPs. So can you address that a little bit of like how going?
Yeah. I love this topic, Deanna. Thank you. Do you have a specific example in mind, or do you want me to talk about it more generally?
Well, I mean, I think, wow, I can think of probably a lot of it. So a specific example is, well, like the sleep was a big one that works for people. I think, for example, I'll give you one of my habits that I really worked on. So I really wanted to incorporate journaling in my day. I was into it for a long time, kind of got out of it. So for me, what I did, kind of based on some of your recommendations, is I paired it with something that I'm already doing. So what I need to do is get my phone away. I wanted to get rid of something and add something. So I kept my phone downstairs in the evening times when I'm getting ready for my bedtime routine. So my phone stays down, but when I plug my phone in, I pick up my journal, and my journal goes upstairs with me. So for me, that helped me put it with something that I do all the time. It wasn't a big change. So maybe that's it, like journaling or meditating for sure. A big one for people, breath work.
Yeah, let me take journaling, and then I'll also pick a nutrition one, which I think it generalizes quite broadly here. One of the things I discovered after coaching probably 15,000, 20,000 people in Tiny Habits, this would be about 2013 or 14. And oh, by the way, James Clear was in that group in 2013. I was getting all this email from people saying, oh my gosh, I just see myself in a new way. I feel like a new person. So then in my 5-day program of Tiny Habits, I started asking the question about identity change. Now you go to the 90s, as a doctoral student, I studied how identity works and how affiliation effects works and so on. So I'd already done research and published in that domain. So I recognized what was coming in from people was like, and they were wondering, is it possible that within 5 days, I am now thinking of myself differently? So in the 5-day program, we evaluate things over the weekend, week after week after week, and I look at the data every week and so on. And what I started to recognize then more clearly is that people can shift their identity quickly and think, I'm the kind of person who journals, or I'm the kind of person that picks healthy snacks, or I'm the kind of person that goes to the farm market, and so on. And the key there, what makes that shift, isn't putting up signs or just doing a little mantra to yourself or so on. It is you do a habit in that domain and feel successful, okay? And it seems not to matter how big the habit is. So let's say, I'll pick snacking, and then I'll go back to journaling. And this is true for me. I had to get away from snacks that had a lot of carbs. I didn't realize at the time, 10 years ago, how my body wasn't really geared for the carbs. But I did recognize that, and I went to cauliflower with mustard on it, which was a very satisfying snack for me. I know it sounds crazy, but I tried a whole bunch and that worked. And so as I would eat it, I would think, good for you, BJ. You're the kind of person that eats healthy snacks. And that feeling, that sense, that recognition of me succeeding at that habit then shifts my identity with regard not just to snacks, but to nutrition in general. It's hard to say how broadly. Now, it probably doesn't shift as, like, I'm the kind of person that over cheese on everything. It's probably not that broad, but it seems to happen within that domain, within snacking and generalizing a little bit to nutrition in general. I'm the kind of person who eats healthy food. Journaling, what I would do in that case is somebody wants to journal and it's not really wired into you. And I love your example. As I pick up the journal, I would think, good for me, BJ. I'm the kind of person that keeps a journal, right? And so feel successful, that just picking it up is important and so on. And what you will see, and we do this pretty naturally. Look what I'm wearing, a Maui shirt. I'm expressing my identity through that shirt. How many of you are wearing a shirt right now that expresses your identity? We do that, right? We do that. Now, if I had no connection to Maui, I wouldn't be wearing the shirt, probably. And there was even a point, I won't go into the detail. Oh, yeah, I will. So I surf every day when I'm in Maui. So I surf over 100 times a year. But I felt like at the beginning, years ago, I wouldn't wear a surfer shirt because I felt like a poser. I felt like I had to reach a certain level to do that. But once I started, so one, your identity can shift. Two, we do things to broadcast that identity, whether it's shopping at the farm market or whether it's having a stack of journals on your desk, and then other people ask us about it. It's like, oh my gosh, did you get the blueberries at the farm market? Which I did this morning. I have no idea how they had blueberries in April, but they did. Or friends would say, what kind of journal do you like the best? So one, your own identity shifts based on you feeling successful. And it seems not to matter how big that is. And then as you project that identity, then other people around you treat you differently. Like if I were to go to a party and eat a donut, people would just look at me and just be shocked. It's like, you're not the kind of person that eats a donut, And so that's really powerful to lock in a behavior or habit is, yes, your own view of yourself changes, but then when the people around you think of you differently, that really locks it in. And not only that, then it attracts people to you that share that identity. That's why in part we wear the hats and all that, like runner or you ran a marathon or whatever. Then people who've run marathons or want to come up and talk to you. So notice again, you are changing your context, your social context in that way. And so that is, goes further than just changing how you think of yourself. Now you're living in what is literally a different social environment because of the identity that you're projecting or the identity that took you to the farm market or took you to the store with all the awesome journal books or what have you.
I think that's so, oh my gosh, that's so good, because I do think that's the next level of accountability to yourself, accountability with somebody else, that you see that. I think this community that Robbie's developed is an accountability, a like-mindedness that makes us accountable to want to show up on the 8 o'clock class or whatever class that we're showing up for. And that's part of that identity, that we're part of a group. And that's a whole nother interesting piece of it. So I love that. And I'm just going to thank that. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. That's perfect.
Thanks for that question.
Okay. Thank you.
I see Laura has a hand, but Robbie, you got to pick and choose.
Yeah, no, you can go ahead too. Of course, BJ. Great questions. Dina, by the way, and I just want to reiterate something that you said, BJ, which is because it's just so powerful. And that's find a habit in the domain that you want to adopt or get better in that domain, and then feel successful about it and do that self-congratulations and the fist pump and all these things that make you euphoric about that.
And if you want to help others change, and I know we got to get to another question. So I won't go through all the details, but I have a younger sister here with me for a while in California. And I asked her to plant a flower box. This was like 3 days ago. And so we went and got the flowers, and I wanted her to get out more in nature because I think that's really, really going to help her. And it is. So as she was planting the flowers, it's like, oh, Kim, that looks so great. And it truly did. Right. So I helped her see that she was succeeding. And then she went on her own and planted a whole separate flower box. And we're looking at other things she's going to do. So when you help people feel successful, you can help shift their identity and shift other related behaviors. So yeah, you can do it for yourself, but you can help others as well. And that means helping them feel successful. And sometimes it's just calling it out. It's like, oh, I love I love the patterns that you've picked here with the purple and the yellow. And then she put these little gnomes in it. And it's like, oh, that's really cute, which it was. And that helps shift her identity and helps her feel confident in doing this flower gardening that I think is going to be really beneficial for her.
Beautiful.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And you know, kudos to you for taking the greatness and the wealth of knowledge that you have about that area and helping those close to you. That's awesome, brother. And Laura's up next. Hi, Laura.
Hello. Thank you for coming, BJ. I'm very excited. Like Dina, I've had your book. I read it last year and also have been using it. So you may have already answered the question. I think one of my question was going to be, I'm in Robbie's group and it already takes a lot of time, but I know I would get more benefit if I do some of my own personal mobility exercises on my own, which is not happening. And so maybe I need to connect more to my why. But but I'm telling myself, which is where your tiny habits would make a difference, is that I feel like I'm already spending so much time on fitness. If I add more stuff, it feels out of balance with everything else in my life. So maybe the answer is just making it really tiny and celebrating, which I'm not that great about doing.
Yeah. Yes. So it sounds like the mobility exercises are important to you. Mm-hmm. If they're not, set them aside for now. There may be a time, but if they are, then I try to come up with what is the smallest, easiest mobility exercise that will actually be meaningful to me. So, and then set that as your low bar. What is the smallest, easiest thing? And then figure out where that fits in your routine. And the days you want to do more than that, do more, but at least do that one thing. The smallest thing with the biggest impact. This is not in the Tiny Habits book because they made me cut it because there's a lot of stuff that I couldn't fit in one book. I call that the feather principle. So a feather is the simplest thing with the biggest impact. And I picked that because there's so many things we can do with feathers. We can decorate, we can tickle, we can warm ourselves, etc. And so what you're looking for in Tiny Habits is the smallest version of that action that will still have some meaning to it, okay? And so I would look for that, and I wouldn't have it be something abstract. I would have it be very, very specific. So in your mind, it's very clear, and then know what it comes after in your routine. And then when you do it, find a way to help yourself feel successful. And in Tiny Habits, we call that celebration, which is longer than we can talk. But you could just say, good for me, I did it. Or good for me, I'm becoming more mobile. Or bam, I execute, hooray, I executed my Tiny Habits plan like I thought. It can be that simple.
Right.
So if I can give you that definite, Laura, so I'll give it, the definite is after the sessions when we do your personal mobility, that time and doing your morning routine. So morning routine for just like 5 or 6 minutes to where you have the biggest tissue restrictions. And then right after the session, which is already part of the session, just those two things will give you the Pareto principle, which is the 20% of the stuff that is going to give you 80% of the results. So on the physical side, I'll just jump in and share that.
Excellent. I get that, but see, I'm not doing it. So that's I'm not doing it. I'm not doing anything before the session. Boom, I start when it starts. And even though I know that would be a really easy place to put it, it hasn't happened yet. So I just wanted to, I think I need to make it super small.
Well, let me build on what Robbie said. There is an expertise around habits and how habits work, and I have that. I don't have the expertise Robbie has about here's exactly the thing to do and when and so on. So a lot of times people will ask me, oh, what's the best financial habits for kids, or what's the best whatever? It's like, those are subject matter questions. I can tell you how to create the habit. So it's so valuable, Robbie, to hear what you just said, and I'm sure the other things you share with this group, because it's here's the what, and then that's the subject matter expertise, and then I have the how, but I don't have the what all the time. Okay, so bringing these things together is perfect.
Awesome. Yeah, I know the what. I just haven't figured out how to apply it. So I think that was helpful. Thank you very much.
And thank you for your awesome question, Laura. This is really, really good, really on point. Great question. I love it. I love it. Love it. And BJ, all this talk about fitness also is making me think that you, my friend, you need to come to some VIP sessions. So here publicly, I will give you a personal invite to come and try our sessions and train with us at any time that you want. We can talk more about that outside of the meeting, but I would love to give you a personal invite.
You're
I'll
on.
give you my gift to you. Yes, sir, absolutely. And as the VIPs will tell you, it's awesome. And any other questions from our VIPs before we log off from today's session? And remember, all that you're learning here, that BJ has a wealth of wisdom in his book, Tiny Habits. I highly suggest you read that book. It's in audiobook format, and it's also in the written book format. So highly suggest you pick up a copy of that, and then also visit his website, bjfogg.com. And our next VIP who has a question here is Mary Claude. Hi, Mary Claude. Welcome.
Okay, you can hear me now? Yeah, okay. I wanted to ask you about overeating, because it's very, very, very emotional, and I just don't know where to start. It's like, when it's too emotional, it seems that even with a tiny habit, it's like, I'm stuck. So
yeah,
how should I start? I mean, and
let me preface this by saying I'm not a dietitian or an expert in this domain subject matter, but let me just share my own personal experience. There was a time when I gained a lot more weight than I wanted, and in part that's why I started Tiny Habits. I thought I'm never going to be able to turn the corner on this, and that's why I really got into habits and developed the Tiny Habits method. So for me, the way I think about it is, one, change the food landscape around me, especially in the home, so I only have available to me healthy snacks or healthy food. And this I had to do in cooperation with my partner. We had to agree no bread in the house policy. We never bring bread in the house. And then later we had to agree no ice cream in the house, because if we had ice cream, there's going to be a time where you think you're going to have a little and we eat the whole tub. And finally it's like, okay, new rule, no ice cream in the home. Right now I'm off cheese, and I go up and up, but I think I'm off cheese for the long term. I think I feel much better. So went to the farm market. I'm not getting cheese. I looked at the cheese. I showed it to my sister. I said, this is really good cheese, but I'm not eating cheese right now. So one is redesign your environment or context. And then it extends to what I think is ground zero for eating is our fridges. So in Tiny Habits, I have this weird little section where I talk about super fridge, and you design what's in your fridge so you can open it up and eat anything you want, as much as you want, without preparation. And so for me, those two things, the policies in home, and then super fridge. So then whenever I got hungry at whatever time, I could open the fridge and I didn't have to resist anything in the fridge. And most things don't require prep, and I could have a sense of eating at that point. So that is in an environment I can control, my home and the fridge. It gets harder if you travel a lot. Like a lot harder. It gets harder if you eat out a lot or if you go to friends' houses. And that's just the truth. So what you might do, in restaurants, the tiny habits I have is, I mean, I love salty snacks. I'm not too much of a sugar person, but salty snacks, crazy. Love them. So if I'm eating Mexican and they bring the nachos to the table, the tiny habit recipe goes like this. After I see the server approaching the table with the nachos, I will say, oh, no nachos for us. Please take them away. So don't let the nachos or the bread hit the table in the restaurant. Now, I've done that with dinner companions that didn't understand. So you got to negotiate that a little bit. But I know for me, at least with nachos, especially if there's like guacamole, I'm going to eventually cave. So I know I just can't have it there. And then popcorn. They didn't want this in the book, but I had a serious popcorn addiction. And I know that sounds trivial and stupid, but it was a big deal. And I would eat masses of popcorn. It was emotional. It was emotional because in my family, what popcorn signified is we're done working. And I grew up in a family, we worked constantly. And so it was this rare moment, maybe once a week, where my dad would make popcorn and we could actually relax and not work. And so I do think for me, the popcorn being this nightly thing, and I would just eat so much. And so I had to, no popcorn in the home, never eat popcorn. You go to a store and there's a bit of popcorn. And then I went to a friend's home. It's the same 93-year-old woman in Maui, who's a dear friend. She knew that I, at one time, was into popcorn. She bought me this super gourmet popcorn and served it for dessert. And I just had to take it and hide it. I didn't want to hurt her feelings, but I just know for me with popcorn, there's no moderation. It's like, bam. So that's how I've dealt with various food issues in my life. But notice how much of it is about doing the habits to redesign your environment or to protect your food environment and not let the nachos hit the table. And at least for me, for things like popcorn and probably for nachos and salty snacks, I just have to, there's not like a moderation that works for me. I can do moderation in other things, but not in those things. And I just realized that about me. Yeah.
The tiny habit is to say no. Start with that. Okay.
Yeah, and tell the host. And I'll just add one more thing, and this goes for everybody. If you end up doing a behavior that goes against what you I don't want to call it a failure, but you don't do the habit or you break down and you eat, nachos that were sitting in front of you, be nice to yourself, forgive yourself and move on. Just move on and let it go. Just let it go. The overriding theme in Tiny Habits is you change best by feeling good, not by feeling bad. You change best by feeling good. I find no strong evidence that being mean to ourselves leads to uplifting, lasting change. Okay. Yes, you can be hard on yourself. You can make yourself feel guilty and change temporarily and maybe even the long term, but you're degrading yourself. And it doesn't have these uplifting effects that being nice to yourself and feeling successful has. Shifts in identity, greater feelings of gratitude and generosity and so on, because you want uplift. You don't want to so be nice to yourself. And even especially my Stanford students, when I'm talking about that, they're totally tuned in because a lot of them got there by their parents being very hard on them, or they are very hard on themselves. And my class, their Tiny Habits, I say, for some of you, this is going to be the hardest class you've ever taken at Stanford because it requires you to dramatically shift what got you to Stanford and embrace a new way of help yourself do what you already want to do, help yourself feel successful and be nice to yourself, and that for many of them, that's a hard shift, but they want it really desperately because they know they're not very happy and they know what got them there isn't going to make them happy in the future.
So like if, for example, because I never have anything that I can eat at home, but I'm going out to get it. So if I can push it for an hour, can I decide that you just push it for an hour, even if I cave after that, but at least I'm trying to, could it be like a tiny habit like that to just, or is it tricky?
Well, I'll just talk from my own experience. I'm almost 100% exactly where I want to be in terms of weight and my nutrition, but it didn't happen overnight. It was a learning experience. But what worked for me, it was never about depriving of food. In fact, on the healthy food, I would like eat until I was like full and I'd take one more bite on the healthy foods. Mm-hmm. So that's weirdly what worked for me. It was never about, oh, I'm hungry and I got to eat. It's like, oh, twinge of hunger. I'm going to eat something and eat more. Now we're doing more, extended fasting. There's like 15-hour period just naturally because we go to bed early. We don't really eat breakfast till later. So we kind of naturally do intermittent fasting. We don't get very hungry. But my point is, I don't think it's very hard to find evidence that deprivation, mm-hmm. whether it's food or other things, leads to uplifting natural change. So I never deprive myself of food, certain foods, but not healthy food. I mean, my partner thinks I'm a carrot. My partner thinks I'm a rabbit because I eat a massive, massive salad every lunch. It's like a family-sized salad. But that's what works for me. And it makes me feel very satiated. And at least in my mind, I think I'm doing the right thing. Maybe I'm not. Maybe Robbie will say, that's too much. But yeah, like that's how I think BJ, about it. No deprivation. Yeah, no deprivation.
What you're sharing about nutrition is so on point. Like it's exactly from the physical side, right? Exactly, so on point. That's exactly what I do. I eat a ton of healthy food. You shape your environment so that at home we only have the best, highest quality, healthiest food. So which I'm at home the high majority of the time. But when I go out personally, I'll eat the right things. I think about all the nutrients and stuff, but I'll have ice cream. I know, close your ears, VIPs. I'll have pizza once in a while. I'll have like whatever I want to have that sounds good to me, but it's 5%, it's 2% of the time that I'm doing that. But at home, 90% of the time, and exercise every day. So, yeah. But on the nutrition side, and exactly what you just said, and I'll eat as much of the healthy food as I want, because the more healthy food you eat, and also remember Dr. Jose Antonio, the protein expert, VIPs, and he talked about protein, the high protein versus super high protein. What's the difference? The super high protein, they lost more body fat because the protein has such a high metabolic activity. So when you eat clean foods, you're actually revving your metabolism. Oftentimes you'll lose more body fat by eating more of the right stuff. And just one pointer that I found that works really well, I'd love to hear what you think about this, BJ, is, a lot of times at night, so late afternoon and evening, that's when you want the junk, which is one of the worst times to have it. And so what you do is don't postpone it. Just say, I'm going to have that in the morning. I'm going to have that, whatever it is, ice cream, candy bar, whatever the worst thing is that you're wanting to eat. I'll eat it in the morning. Well, usually you don't want to eat junk food in the morning. You really don't want to eat like ice cream or candy bar. You want to start with the healthy breakfast. So it's much easier and you're not tired. You don't have that mental fatigue, that decision-making overload. So it becomes so much easier, but you don't have to deprive yourself. I'm going to have it. No problem. I can have it. I'm going to have it in the morning. And so it just makes that decision, I feel, so much easier. I don't know what you think about that, BJ.
Because I know how to create habits, the question early on became, well, what habits? And nutrition really mattered for me. So I really tried to dial it in and figure out what foods were serving me and not. And I really did that. There's a longer story here, but I did it over the course of a year and listed, here's the foods that work, here's the foods that aren't working, and so on. And this sounds crazy, but just by paying attention to my body's reaction, which had I heard this 10 years ago, I thought, oh, that's impossible. But I somehow tuned in to that and was able to develop this way. The cheese, some cheese is like, I'm not sure. But what I'm doing now is, boom, I got continuous glucose monitor on to further dial it in. And I'm just ending my first 2 weeks. I want to get it put in again. And I'm learning that I'm doing pretty good. But what I did learn, sushi. I thought sushi was okay for me. It is not at least I don't think so. My blood sugar just went off the charts with sushi. Crazy. This morning, deliberately, I usually don't eat anything more. I just drink a ton of water, good water. And I ate some honey just to see what would happen. And not that much happened. It's like, it wasn't terrible, but actually love honey, but I was just goofing around to see what would happen. And so with the different, even though I feel like I've dialed in my diet, getting, you know, the glucose readings after things has been really fun and interesting and helping me be even more thoughtful about what I eat. And now sushi's off my menu. Sorry, sushi. It was like, I did much better with Thai food than sushi. So I was like, okay, that's really interesting to me. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
And we have time for one more question from our VIP, Nancy. Hi, Nancy. Welcome.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, Nancy.
Hi. So my question relates to taking the time to cook. Healthy eating is not my problem. I'm a very healthy eater, but I seem to be blocked in actually taking the time to cut up those vegetables for that big salad and to menu plan, and it's a whole huge big process that overwhelms me. And it's like, what do I give up in my life? My schedule's already pretty stripped down. So do I give up working or sleeping or fitness or meditation or family time? It's almost like a decision of that. And I love to eat healthy. And so I'm really struggling with eating too many prepared foods or takeout foods that are kind of healthy, but not what I want to be eating. So what would you recommend to get those kind of habits started?
I'm going to give my personal opinion here. So yes, behavior scientist about habits, but again, this is a how to eat, and I haven't studied this exactly, and I'm not a dietitian. In our home, we kind of eat the same meals over and over. And it could be steamed spinach and eggs, or sauteed mushrooms and eggs, or some vegetable and eggs every morning. We feel like that's good for us. Maybe some people disagree. My lunch is very consistent. There's really no decision to be made. I grab the lettuce, I grab whatever veggies I have. I throw in some nuts of some sort. I have healthy salad dressing made from avocado oil, or I make it myself. And then I often have sardines because I kind of love, weirdly enough, sardines work for me. And so there's no decisions there. It's just a matter of putting it together. And then dinner is vegetable and fish, or vegetable and mushroom. And it's simple. So our eating style is really simple at home, and we don't vary it a lot. And maybe some people say that's really bad, but that's what's working for us. And so we don't really have to plan meals. It's just like open the fridge, grab what I typically grab for lunch, maybe with a few twists here and there. And then my partner cooks pretty much a handful of dishes, the same dishes every dinner. And my breakfast is very, very consistent. So that might be giving you bad guidance, but that's how we eat almost, I would say 98% of the time. I'm not exaggerating. Like, we went like a year and a half without going to a restaurant during the pandemic, just at home. And then the variation comes in. Do I put mustard on it? Or I bought this really weird kind of hot sauce at the farm market. So the variation comes with a little bit in the seasoning, and that works for me. That's okay with me. I don't get bored with that somehow. Other people probably have other methods. Again, this is not my scientific answer. It's just me and my partner, and it's worked well for us. So.
That's awesome advice, again, from the physical side too, BJ. I mean, the only thing is, once you're doing that, is just you should check your micronutrients and potential food allergens. If you don't know that you're eating a food consistently, that you have some type of allergen that doesn't show up as a normal allergy, or that you're missing some micronutrients. But you could check that, and then you'd easily just put something into your rotation if you are in fact deficient in one of the micronutrients, and then that'll become part of the mainstay. So in terms of doing the glucose monitor and going next level, your next level in that would just, if you haven't already, getting food allergy tests and micronutrient tests. So
we are actually in the process, and we're working with a functional medicine doctor
Awesome.
Quite intensively to further dial. We're really happy where we're at, but just dialing it in. And it's kind of expensive. And my partner was like, whoa. And it's like, Benny, it's our health and it's our longevity. There's nothing more valuable than this. We're going to invest everything we can, of course, to be healthy. That's how we see it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. No better investment than in your health. Absolutely. As like, you know, he who has his health has a million wishes, and he or she who does not only has one, right? So yeah, got to take care of your health for sure. Well, thank you, VIP family and our Full Body Fix members for joining us today. Thank you so much, BJ. Well, you're definitely going to have to join us for some VIP training sessions and optimize the body mechanics as well. So grateful to you, my friend. And it's been an awesome episode here of the Full Body Fix. Remember, Tiny Habits is BJ's book, and his website is bjfogg.com. Much love to all of you, and we'll see you again very soon. And in closing, what are some things, some big takeaways that came from today's show was pick the 20% or less of an action if you're trying to get into something new that will give you 80% of the results. Shape your environment to make the behavior easier to sustain, right? And when your action doesn't match your ideal, don't be hard on yourself. Be good to yourself. Be loving to yourself. And enforce those good behaviors when you do those good behaviors. And so for so many other valuable details, pick up BJ's book, Tiny Habits. You'll learn a ton, as Patricia and I have, as well as many of our VIPs who have read his book. Make it an amazing weekend. Happy Easter to you. Happy Easter holiday weekend. Much love. We'll see you soon.